Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Peter, there was recently a New York Times article concerning the retreat from the 30-year home mortgage.
Okay.
And in it, they discussed how interest-only loans are being used by some consumers as an excuse to walk away from the home.
Okay.
Does that signal something to you? Is there something that you read into that?
Well, it's fucked up. I mean, for anybody who's a borrower of any debt to walk away from it or walk away from the home or the asset that they had to borrow the money to purchase in the first place is a screwed up way to approach business and approach borrowing. And I mean, in real estate, if you're going to buy a home knowing or expecting or intending to walk away from it, I mean, why would you get into it in the first place? I mean, it sort of makes you a bad player. So if there's more bad players out there doing that more frequently, does that signal something? I mean, it sort of reminds me of what we saw back in 2008, before that economic crisis. I mean, I'll never forget there was an article written about how homeownership was in the reach of so many back in 2008, how the economy was doing so great, and so many people were being uplifted and able to purchase homes that weren't purchasing homes prior. And the examples that were cited in this article, it was amazing. I mean, the first example mentioned was a gentleman that played music at a restaurant. Specifically, he was a mariachi singer who made his income in cash and worked weekends at a restaurant. And the article mentioned how the bank's only method of underwriting and scrutinizing this potential borrower's income was just giving him a form, and he filled it out. How much money did he make? And he wrote in some number that was way more than what he really made. And the bank went ahead and approved a loan based on a bullshit unverified income amount. And, you had a lot of that happening in 2008, and those are subprime borrowers. They got subprime mortgages, and we all know what happened after that. So, here we are in 2020, and you're saying that there's an article out there suggesting that there's a proliferation of interest-only loans. Well, if the banks are making those interest-only loans on solid foundation, fundamental underwriting practices, and fundamental credentials of the borrower and the applicant, I think that that's probably a healthy thing. The problem comes when you've got potentially unqualified borrowers seeking any loan, whether it's interest only or not. But in this case, okay, let's say they're interest only, and probably they are going to be interest only if the borrower is unqualified, because the interest only loan has a lower monthly payment. You're only making the interest payment as opposed to principal and interest. Once you add the principal in the monthly payment, it can go up by 50, 40, 30% more than what just the interest only payment would be. So sure, if you have an unqualified borrower seeking an interest only loan, it may signal that they're buying too much house, they're buying too much business or property. And then if you've got an unqualified borrower getting into a low barrier to entry loan that's interest only, sure, are they going to be able to walk away from it easier? Well, yeah, they don't have to service a higher amount of debt each month. They don't have to write a bigger check each month along the way. I mean, when you have skin in the game and when you make those monthly payments that are principal and interest, you're going to be less likely to walk away from the house. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that people would knowingly and intentionally enter into a situation with walking away from the asset being a viable option for them. I mean, if I were to ever be in a situation, God forbid, where I was on the butt of my ass, just like trying to figure out how to make mortgage payments, I mean, I would scratch and scrape and claw and I would figure it out. I mean, I would never just walk away. And yeah, so there is that feature in society perhaps where they say, oh, it's an easy loan, I can get it, the banks are lending right now, and interest only is a great product for me because I can have a cheap monthly obligation. And hey, if it doesn't work out, we tried. I mean, it's fucked up for me to hear that and to imagine that, but I can see how the The bad apples out there would do that. And it probably signals, if it's happening too much, it signals a weakness in lending practices. But I don't believe that the banks are lending weaker now. I think that the banks and the lenders out there fixed a lot of that stuff systemically after the 2008 crisis. But yeah, there are interest-only loan products out there. I just would hate to see people consider interest-only loans to be some sort of green light to go ahead and walk away from the home or business or building or whatever it is. I mean, be a big boy or be a big girl. You got to stay in the game. You can't. Defaults are bad. You can't default. It's going to fuck up your credit. You're never going to do another deal with a bank. It's going to be on your public record. I mean, forget about it. So, to the extent that there are people out there that feel enabled to walk away from the deal because they have a cheap interest-only loan, reconsider it. And I'm not giving a plug to the banks here. I mean, you all know how I feel about banks and their role in society and how they've messaged and marketed to us. I mean, I'm no fan of it. But the banks do provide a very key and important role. They provide liquidity. They're a source of debt and funds when we need them and when we want them. And as long as you're a responsible consumer and borrower of bank products, interest-only loans, things will be fine. But just know what you're getting into, and the banks need to know what they're doing as well. And I think that they do, by and large.
Yeah, and I think largely you could say that irresponsible borrowers may view defaulting or walking away as something that only affects them.
Oh, it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
We talked about before, right here, George, how everything's connected, and we've seen recently in our society with COVID how we're just all connected to one another, businesses, individuals. And so if a subprime borrower defaults on their loan, that loan has to get off the bank's books at that point. The banks can't hold non-performing loans. Non-performing loans to a bank are liabilities, they're not assets. When you borrow the loan and it's performing, it's an asset. As soon as it becomes non-performing, it's a liability and they have to get rid of it. So what do they do to get rid of it? They package a non-performing loan together with many other non-performing loans, because regretfully there's always some non-performing loans, and they sell the package off to investors. The investors can be private investors, but since 2008, the non-performing loans end up going is to either Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, which are government-backed, taxpayer-funded entities. So now you've got the taxpayer taking the burden for the non-performing borrower and this non-performing loan. So yeah, when your neighbor defaults on his mortgage, it impacts all of us. It impacts you, me, everybody, by the virtue that we're taxpayers and we're the ones that are propping up Fannie and Freddie, and they're the ones that are buying these non-performing loans. I mean, it's an issue that the government's been looking to solve for a long time. We're not quite there yet. But yeah, it's bad. And by the way, when the government has to bail out Freddie and Fannie like they did, it's not the government that's bailing them out. It's you and I that's bailing them out.
Right, is that kind of the connection you're referring to when you say things like
yeah, absolutely.
Details drive details is something you've said.
Well, details, look, in this case, I wanted to illustrate the connection between your neighbor who got an interest-only loan on a house that he shouldn't have purchased and now he's in default and in foreclosure, and how does that affect us? But sure, details drive details with everything, and everything's connected. So when I run a business, I'm so focused on the details of the business, because you can't fuck up one thing and then have the other thing be successful as a result of the fuck up. I mean, you gotta nail the first thing. It's connected to the second thing. You gotta nail the second thing. You gotta nail the third thing, and you gotta perform it. You gotta execute. And the details of your execution will lift you and make you succeed. And so absolutely details drive details. So in my business of commercial income producing real estate, we run apartment buildings. I mean, from the day we show up in the office, every day, we're running a very detailed operation. New applications come in. We screen them in a detailed manner. We're looking at credit. We're looking at income. We're looking at where the income is coming from, in-state, out-of-state. We're looking at prior rental and landlord history. We're looking at public records. We're looking at credit reports. So already we're underwriting our applicants in a very detailed manner. And then we go through a lease document process where the applicant, now tenant, signs a lease. My lease document is very detailed. It's a result of 30 years in the business. It talks about every possible scenario to protect both the landlord and the tenant. And it's a very evolved document that no one else uses. So I believe, a high degree of success with my landlord-tenant relationships with my residents, because my lease document is so evolved and so specific. Now they're in the buildings, they're living there, they have maintenance requests, they have needs, they have payment, they have things that they have to interact with us on. I mean, everything happens in such a detailed way. I mean, you can't blindfold yourself and show up to work and hope that it all goes well. I mean, you have to have your eyes open, you gotta function, you gotta perform. I mean, like anybody, like an athlete, like anybody. You're not gonna have great success unless you focus on details. Sure, you have to have a 30,000 foot above ground perspective at all times. Sure, you have to have multiple horizons that you're looking at and anticipating and managing at all times. But you gotta execute. You gotta execute on the details. You gotta show up and perform in micro and macro ways. So details drive details 100%. And you can't have a team of 20 people with one weak link and expect that you're going to be very successful, because that weak link is going to suck you down and drag you down. The detail of that one weak person is going to be impactful negatively. So I always feel that details drive details, and I teach that and I speak about that a lot because it's an important concept. I find that some people are very detail-oriented with one thing and not with so many other things. And if you're a detail-oriented person, it's a great skill set to have, and it's a great way to work and to practice. Just be detail-oriented with everything. Take time to manage your bigger picture discussion as well, but details are so important with team building, with operations, with running businesses. And there's nobody who's successful anywhere, ever, in the history of time that got to where they were without focusing on details. I promise you. So if you want to achieve more success and do more in your job, in your business, in your company, focus on those details. Learn how to execute and have a high degree of detail orientation with the way you approach everything.
Yeah, so as we're discussing, you're touching on a lot of things that are relevant to real estate specifically. Obviously, that's the business you're in.
Yeah.
You said to me just a moment ago, not all real estate is created equal.
It's not.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, so for the general public out there, when they use the term real estate and they talk about real estate, often they're talking about a single family home or buying a house or an apartment. When I talk about real estate, I'm talking about income producing real estate. I own and manage apartment buildings. So right there, we're seeing a differentiation in types of real estate. We've talked about different asset classes. Asset classes are multifamily residential, single family attached, single family detached, office, industrial, warehouse, special use, right? So there's different classes of assets within real estate. It's interesting. I got a call from an old high school friend this past week who said that he had seen our content on social media and he wanted to ask me a question about potentially purchasing a co-op in New York City, because he's seeing that the prices on the internet sites are showing that they're depressed a little bit, they're down a little bit right now for apartments in New York City. So he asked me, Peter, is this too good to be true? I mean, why would this apartment that once traded for $958,000 now be listed for $217,000? And I took a little look at it. So I saw quickly that the co-op apartment that he was talking about is in a building which is on a land lease. So that's when you have the bricks that are built on top of the land, and the owner or owners of the bricks are paying rent to the landowner. And here you have a situation where an entire building of apartments, a co-op, is on top of this land, subject to a lease, and the co-op ownership is paying rent to the landowner, and that lease is coming due, and it's like a speeding train running to a brick wall. They have to renew that lease. It's going to be renewed at a big increase because these land leases are 30, 50, 100 years long. You own an apartment in this co-op building, your land lease is coming up, you're going to get hit with another special assessment, and your monthly dues into the co-op are going to go from, $2,000 to $15,000 a month, because you and your other 200 neighbors that have apartments in this building have to fund this huge increase on the land lease. Why would you want to buy that? If you buy that not knowing it going in, you're fucked. If you own there and right now and it doesn't get worked out favorably, you're fucked. And so, not all real estate's created equal. That's why when I talk about real estate, I'm talking about income producing real estate that I can buy that gives me cash flow, that gives me long-term capital appreciation, that gives me lots of tax benefits. When you buy a co-op in a building with a land lease, you're just throwing money away. Oh, and by the way, when you look up the sales history of this co-op in this particular building, you see that it sold for $900,000, then $600,000, then $400,000. and now it's being listed for $217,000. So you see very quickly that the trajectory of the value of this particular apartment is going down. And for New York City, you don't often see a downward trajectory. Sure, you had little blips in time, 9/11, 2008. Now with COVID, a lot of the apartments in real estate, residential real estate in New York City, is downward trending or a little bit depressed in price. Other types are thriving, such as townhomes and apartments with lots of outdoor space, balconies, roof decks, things like that. But for the most part, the common apartment situation in New York City isn't trading, and values are down right now. But other than these few specific moments, you see New York real estate and real estate in these other densely populated urban centers, San Francisco, Boston, LA, really appreciate a lot over time. So why would you want to own this asset that's tanking in value? It's public record. You could look it up. You could see the values going down every time it trades. It's because of that land lease, and I would not want to be in a situation where I owned something and I had a large part of my net worth in this asset that was subject to something, in this case, a land lease, which is eroding my value. I mean, these people have to work out the terms of this land lease very quickly, because the owners of the units in this building, they got to know what they got. I mean, a lot of them aren't going to be able to afford the new normal for them once the land lease gets worked out. They're going to have to sell. Now you're going to have all this inventory flood the market, and it's going to suppress values in this building even more. So not all homes are created equal. Not all real estate opportunities are equal. Not all asset classes within the real estate world are created equal. So pick your asset class. We've talked about that a lot here. Pick your asset class. Pick your home type. Pick where you're going to invest your money. And really consider if you want to lock up your net worth and your cash into a residence, a single family home, an apartment that might have some of these issues going on, or if you want to maybe continue to rent and consider investing that money into other types of assets or opportunities, for sure.
I remember in one of our earliest episodes, you talked about how we need to get comfortable talking about money.
We do.
And not just with each other, but with people that are more experienced.
It's like taboo for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think some of our viewers and listeners have noticed that, and obviously listened to that episode.
Yeah.
We recently got a comment from one of our TikTok followers.
Okay.
And they asked, "Hey, Peter, been watching your content. You say I should ask about money, so I'm asking you about money. What do you got?" When you hear something like that, or when you get people coming up to you for advice, what's the kind of things that you talk about? What are the kind of things?
I get it all the time. I had a conversation like this just the other day with a 26-year-old woman who asked me, "Peter, I'm not working right now. I'm laid off. I've got a bunch of money in my savings account. I've been responsible with my money for the past 5 years working since I got out of college. I don't know shit about money, and it's really wild because all my male friends know a lot about money and investing, and none of my female friends nor I know anything about money and investing," which I think is an interesting and separate side conversation to have for another time, because maybe there's something we can talk about regarding gender and awareness of finances and money. I mean, I don't know. I want to get into that a little bit. But she was saying she didn't know anything about money, and she's got a lot of money in her savings account. She's not working right now. She doesn't know what to do. So we started talking about, what are your goals? What makes you happy? What do you want from money in your life? She didn't have a lot of those answers, but she's now thinking about those answers. So you have to know what you want out of life. You have to know where you're going with the money. I mean, she was comfortable and proud having all this money in her savings account, sitting there doing nothing. It's not news how I feel about money sitting in a savings account. It's good to have some money in a savings account. It's not good to have all your money in a savings account, and it's certainly not good to have an excessive amount of money in a savings account. So I was talking to her about these kinds of things. I was talking to her about the differences between stocks, bonds, different types of stocks that you can get. You can open up an online brokerage account or a trading account, and do you want to do that? Is that right for you? We started to have that kind of dialogue. And she felt like, oh, that sounds nice. I can open up a brokerage trading account and I can pick some stocks. And now she's talking about picking stocks. I mean, she didn't even know what a brokerage trading account was 5 seconds ago. Now she wants to pick stocks. We got into it for a couple hours, and I find a lot of young people are in the same boat. She wasn't shy about it. She asked, and she was really engaging me on these topics. And while I do get a lot of questions from young people about these kinds of things, I really encourage everybody to speak more about money. I mean, how much do you make? How much do you have in your savings account? What are you doing with your money? Are you going on $5,000 vacations twice a year when you're in your 20s? Because that's a lot of money that you could figure out other things to do with, like invest, if you maybe went on $2,500 vacations. So that's all part of the dialogue, right? You earn whatever money you earn, and in life you get whatever money you get in life, from your job, from inheritance, from winning the lottery, whatever it is. Some of us get a little bit of money in our lives, some of us get a little bit more money, some of us get a whole lot. Whatever your amount is, you have to figure out how to maximize that amount in your lifetime. You have to figure out what to do with it. You have to live, feed yourself, feed your family, take care of your family. But then after that, you have to invest. What's left over? Are you going to blow it on a Lamborghini? Are you going to blow it on vacations to St. Bart's all the time and look like a hot shot? And, what are you going to do? I mean, people need to live within their means, especially young people. So I stress this a lot for young people. People who are just coming out of school or entering the workforce or becoming independent or trying to become independent for the first times in their lives need to really look at their income and their spending, and more often than not, I find that they have a spending problem, not an income problem. And we hear from them so much that I want to make more, I want to make more, I want to make more. And I always challenge them to think how they can spend less, because when you spend less, you'll have more to invest. And investing is the way you're going to get to where you want to go, not just getting more money at your current job. I mean, getting more money at your current job is great, don't get me wrong, and I encourage everybody to seek out the good fit for them that makes them happy and gets them paid what they want to get paid. But you really need to invest to get to where you want to go. So the conclusion with this woman was, you got to invest, you got to start thinking about it, get a personal financial statement, go onto the social media platforms, start following all these people that are putting content out. You're going to find some smart people out there. Start engaging with them and learn about money. I mean, watch your money, learn about money, measure your money. Give the money the respect that it deserves, because if you're not paying attention to it, who is? It's your money. Pay attention to it. So I fired her up a little bit. I got her thinking about all these things, and really she took away that she has to learn more. She has to become aware of what she wants, the self-awareness component that I always talk about. And she's got to set some goals. I mean, she doesn't know right now, but she's going to know soon if she wants to make $100,000 a year, if she wants to make $500,000 a year. And if she wants to make $500,000, why? What does she want to do with the extra $400 above and beyond the $100? Does she want to invest it? Does she want to travel? Does she want to buy a home? Does she want to rent a home? She has to figure all those things out. So she's thinking about it now. She wasn't before. So people, you got to think about it. You got to talk about it. Mentors in your life, peers in your life, people that you work with that you respect, ask them how they got there. Ask them what the path is. Ask them what they recommend to you so that you can consider what your options are to make more money, to invest. Ask them what investments they made. I mean, when was the last time you had that conversation with someone? Never. Ask someone, what investments do you make? You'll see what the answers are that you get. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Fantastic. So Peter, here's our broken record moment.
All right, give it to me.
COVID's been happening.
Yeah.
We're now 4 months in, a couple months in. Is there anything new that you've seen in how it's affected businesses? Any updates that you see with COVID and real estate and business?
I've been thinking lately a little bit about, on a macro level, how things have shifted away from a typical model that we've all been used to for a long time, and that is the wholesale to retail model. And a lot of things have reminded me of that lately. Historically, you have producers, wholesalers, and retailers, and that's the supply chain from manufacture to consumption. And what we've seen over the past decade, 2 decades, is the erosion of wholesale. COVID has really accelerated. Whatever wholesale's been left, COVID's really accelerated that erosion. So right now, everybody who was in retail is suffering because no one's buying at retail, right? People want fast, they want cheap, they want inexpensive, and they want quality. They want to go to the source, they want to cut out the middlemen. And what that means is the guy on the one end who's charging the highest price is gone, and the guy on the manufacturing side has more opportunity if he can figure out how to now capture the retail dollar, or what was previously the retail dollar. People that were wholesalers want to charge retail price for their goods. People that are retailers are discounting and marking off. And so pricing is all over the place. An example of this, you see this with the big brands. The big brands were typically and historically manufacturers that got their products to the consumer through a network of distributors, wholesalers, who would then sell to retailers. Well, now the manufacturers and the brands are opening up their own stores. They manufacture the products, and now they're also retailing the products. So they're capturing more margin by cutting out the various stages of the distribution process and the wholesaler. So now you have wholesalers that are buying goods from various different manufacturers, and they don't want to then sell their wholesale goods to the retail chain anymore. They want the retail prices. So the wholesalers are becoming retailers. The manufacturers are becoming retailers. The retailers are going out of business because there's too much competition. No one's going into stores and malls. They're shopping online, and their prices are too high anyway. And they have too much overhead and too much of a P&L expense list to discount beyond a certain amount, so the retailers are falling off a cliff. So now you got manufacturers and wholesalers competing to be retailers in a new sort of way and at new pricing. I mean, it's a really interesting time to notice what's happening. Oh, and by the way, you mentioned real estate and how it's impacting real estate. Malls, retail, we already know how I feel about all of that, and this is why the malls are empty. Not only are people not going to malls because they can buy what they need online, and the shopping experience just generally sucks, and hey, during COVID, it's just a crowded public place. There's an erosion of margin because they're the last point of contact of the product before the consumer gets it. The consumer wants more for less. So paying retail is something that consumers becoming more and more aware of, and has been super aware of it for a long time now. So the retailers are just smashed. No one wants to pay retail prices. It's a big mess out there, but there is an erosion of the supply chain, and new supply chains are forming. We're able to get closer to the source, closer to the manufacturers. We're able to get better pricing and maintain a high quality. So it's a great time as a consumer. Take advantage of all of those things. And then in business, accomplish a lot more yourself, in-house. Cross-train your staff. Make sure your skill sets are not just your traditional skill sets, but new ones. Evolve, learn more, because you can deploy services to your business and to your, in my case, my buildings, with your internal team, your existing team, without having to outsource so much, without having to go to the retail third-party markets to bring in services for your business or for your buildings. There's a compression of the supply chain. Stay on top of it because you're going to find value there.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out on it. Ready for Zest Quest, Peter?
Always, George. My favorite thing.
Excellent. First one, what's your earliest memory of getting in trouble?
Wow. You know, I think I've mentioned here before, I have a lot of those situations in my life. When I was a kid, I was definitely a handful, probably, for my parents. My earliest situation of getting into trouble. A few things pop into my mind. I climbed a tree right before dinner, and I was stuck up in the tree, and it pissed my parents off. And they had to call the fire department, come get me down out of the tree like a cat.
They called the fire department?
I was stuck on this fucking tree. It was this great tree, and after that I learned how to climb it the right way. But that first time, I climbed it, I got up the tree, I got up to these branches that formed like a little V. It was like a little seat. And I sat up in this V with my legs straddled on either side of the branch, and I was stuck. I could not figure out how to get back. I painted myself into a corner. And my mom and dad had to call the fire department, and they were apologizing to the fire. Sorry, our kid's a pain in the ass. And they got me out of a tree like I was some stray cat. And that wasn't fun. That happened, I must have been, 6. I remember in high school, my parents, they would travel a lot, and I was the youngest of my brothers and I was the youngest by far, so they were all off in college and living their lives. I was in school, and my parents would be traveling, and I'd be home, and I'd maybe have some people over to the house more frequently and in larger amounts than I should have. It was actually the start of my entrepreneurial career. I would have these parties and charge for red Solo cups at the door. And that's how I was able to fund the party and make a couple of bucks. And but yeah, they found out about that, and it wasn't good for me. But I do appreciate the lessons I learned in business when I did that. So there's two sides to that coin.
I think it's the thing. All the examples you've given. I mean, the tree. You said you learned how to climb a tree correctly after that, and with it.
Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble as a kid.
Yeah.
Thankfully, your question was not what's an example of trouble that I got into recently. No, but I don't get into trouble now. So, which I'm happy about and proud of, right? And if anybody my age is still getting into trouble, you got a problem. Yeah. But I got into a lot of trouble as a kid, and most of it was just good fun trouble.
That leads perfectly into my next question, actually, and the last question for today. What's the title of the current chapter of your life? If you had to name the chapter of this current part of your life, what do you think you would name it?
It's got multiple names.
Okay.
It's a multi-phrase chapter title.
I'm excited.
Growth, expansion, achievement. I mean, I'm always hungry for those things. I mean, that never goes away. Yeah. Enjoyment. I'm really at a time where I really place a lot of importance and value on enjoying the things that I love, my family, my friends, the activities that I like to do. You know, I guess the way I feel about the question, George, is that I'm not really in a particular chapter. I mean, the book or my life, metaphorically speaking, is one big show for me, and it's about the same core principles and core things that we've talked about here before. Again, I repeat, my family, my friends, my health, happiness, enjoyment. I love what I do at work. I love what I do out of work. And I just keep all that going as much as possible. I mean, I'm not really in a new phase or a new part or a new chapter. I'm not doing anything new. I mean, these are the things that I was always doing yesterday, last year, 10 years ago. So for me, it's the continuation of the same chapter that I've been in.
Stay in the course.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks, George.
I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.